Well, good afternoon, good morning, or good evening, depending upon where you are in the world, and welcome to today's DevOps.com webinar. I'm Charlene O'Hanlon, moderator for today's event, and I welcome you. As always, we have a great event on tap. You know, the folks from Flatora always do an amazing job. But before we get started, we do have a few housekeeping items we need to go over. First of all, today's event is being recorded, so if you miss any or all of the event, you will have the opportunity to access it later on. Following today's webinar, we will be sending out an email that contains a link to access the webinar on demand. And we are taking questions from the audience. So if at any time during today's presentation you have a question, please don't wait, don't hesitate. Just use that question and answer tab there on your big marker interface and submit your questions. And I know Jeff and James will be talking about the questions throughout the event. So please don't wait to get your question in. Don't wait for the question and answer period, because it's going to be throughout. We also have a very interactive chat feature. So please, I do encourage you, if you've got a comment that you want to send over to us, question, whatever you want to share, please use that public chat and we will go ahead and monitor that. And we might even chat you back. And then finally, at the end of today's webinar, we are doing a drawing for 4 $25 Amazon gift cards. So please stick around. Hopefully you'll be one of our 4 lucky winners. And with that, let's go ahead and kick off today's webinar, which is Fix the Achilles Heel of Your DevOps Evolution. Our speakers today are Jeffrey Keyes, who is the VP of Product Marketing Strategy at Flatora, and James Gregory, who is a Product Manager at Flatora. Gentlemen, thank you both so much for joining me today. Really do appreciate it.
Well, good morning. Thank you. I'm excited for this conversation.
I'm excited for this conversation too, and I also want to point out that it's I think it's Tuesday or sorry, Friday already for James, because it's what 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning in Australia. So he gets mad props for being up this early and taking part in this webinar. Before I turn things over to you guys, I neglected to mention we do have a polling question that we are going to be getting to in a bit. So please, guys, hopefully we can get everybody as involved as possible in that as well. So I'm going to shut up now, take myself off camera, put myself on mute. I'll come back when the polling question comes on.
Awesome. Yes. Hello to everyone. And I see from Denmark, Pittsburgh. Get over to the chat and just do a little hello and a shout out from wherever you're from. Interesting. Just so you know, the kind of conversation we're going to have today. James, you've got a kind of a unique background, because not only a product manager, you used to be, well, more of a consultant, and with particular focus on test environment management, actually. Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So a lot of my background is working in environment management, setting up environment management functions, things like that. So just helping customers to kind of move that area forward and just promote environment management in general.
Fantastic. Look at that. We've got Half Moon Bay, Vienna. Well, today we're going to go through the conversation about the, one of the biggest blockers in your DevOps evolution, and truly has been an Achilles heel. So what is the problem with environments? And we're going to go through that. We're going to talk a bit about moving beyond spreadsheets, a recipe for moving forward, what it looks like, and really how to get started now. So we're going to be answering questions all the way through. It'll be pretty interactive. I'll be watching the questions as they come in. So get ready. Just put them in as we go. We'll get to them as we are on this journey. But let's start this conversation off with setting the stage. Route to live. People talk about route to live. What is it, James? How do we get there? What's this whole environment thing about anyways?
So what we kind of mean when we're talking about route to live is the relationship between environment management and release management, really, to be honest. So it's really around what environments do you move your code through in order to go live, be that new features or maybe some defect fixes, etc. So what journey do you take with each of those?
Sure. And some common ones here that are listed, integration, user acceptance. What are those used for?
So really, the key area for environment management is really around helping to manage and facilitate the use of test environments. So whatever kinds of testing you're doing, whether it's as you've got here, your integration testing or your acceptance testing, it's ensuring that those environments are fit for purpose and that the testing is thorough and valid based on those environments and the configurations of those environments compared to your production.
Yeah. So right now people are going, well, duh, I already do that, So what's the impact of, what's the impact when things go wrong? What kinds of things do go wrong and where do the screw ups happen?
So the kind of key areas where it can go wrong is, delays to your QA, so extended testing cycles, for example. But the real problems come in with configuration mismatches. So if you've got different configurations on your QA environments compared to your production, then worst case scenario, you're invalidating your testing because you're not testing on a production baseline, and you're potentially introducing defects into your production estate off the back of that. So it's a vital area to get right.
Yeah, for sure. It's interesting because as the testing cycle goes on, any hiccup in that journey really causes problems. I remember one prospect that came to Patora talked about how they were struggling because they had an offshore test team. They were turning on their environments every morning for the offshore team, and they were having problems getting those environments up to speed, so much so that they were losing valuable test time. They were losing anywhere from 2 to 4 hours of their testing day on just wrangling the environments to try to get them ready. Well, let's continue the story of problems. So as you look at this problem of configuration, can you talk about some of the kind of configurations that go into these environments that trip people?
Sure. So it's really a mixture of things. So you're really thinking about, your code, your any customization to the configuration that needs to be done, any particular settings that are relevant, and also your data. Your data needs to be correct for those test environments to ensure that you can hit all those test scenarios that you need to. And like you just mentioned, I've seen it where you lose a test environment and you've got 200 offshore testers that can't work, and the cost implications of that kind of thing kicking in because there's no one up onshore at that time to help support those environments.
Sure, exactly. How have you ever seen the problem of where a test team runs into a critical show-stopping bug? They decide to stop the test cycle, and it's like, well, we got to get a hot fix to that environment. What kind of problems does that cause?
There's always questions around, how do you set out your environments? Do you kind of from a release management perspective, do you have a hotfix environment? Do you effectively update the hotfix environment before you update your production or afterwards? So it kind of just needs to support your release management processes really, and then just ensure you deploy to the right environments at the right time.
Understood. Very cool. So as you look forward into this process a bit more, why has this been the Achilles heel of DevOps? What is it? Why is it slowing down our DevOps journey?
I think it's because environments are complex. We talk about provisioning an environment, but often these are black boxes. People don't understand what it takes to get the environment up and running, what kind of sizing it needs to be. Does it need to be production like, or can it be scaled down?
Mm-hmm.
So you need to understand what activities are you going to perform in those environments, and then also have the environment sized accordingly to support that task. So you can't just, as do performance testing, load and performance testing in an SIT environment. It just doesn't work that way. So it's so those are the kind of issues you come across are the provisioning of the environment, obviously the deployment of code to that environment.
Yep. It's kind of funny. You bring that up, load testing in an SIT environment. That was the story that I think I've told a few times where we were doing a big demo to management. We had these cool new features coming out. It's going to rock the world. And we get in and and we're doing our demo, and like the whole demo is a disaster. Like it just blows up, and it blows up not because our code was bad, not because our deployment was bad, but turns out another team was on the same environment running a massive performance and load test on their stuff, which just melted down the whole system, and it was disaster. So really it comes down to this question of, how do you know who's on each environment, and what are those configurations, and how do you see and manage those processes through? What's your thoughts about that? How do you know?
Yeah, I've seen it. I've seen it done where, if someone wants to use an environment, they have to call everyone and say, are you using it right now? Because there is no record of who's using the environment, what they're using it for, and how long they're going to be in there effectively. So it's kind of almost, you're testing and hoping luck's on your side, that no one's going to do anything to disrupt your testing at that time or invalidate it, as I mentioned earlier.
Yeah. Now, I know the ultimate goal is achieving infrastructure as code, or decomposing the application, breaking dependencies such that, we're only serverless or microservices where it really doesn't matter. But I mean, why aren't people just jumping there? Why is that not happening?
I think the issue is, we're living in a hybrid environment still. Most enterprises have still got legacy monolithic applications. We've got mainframes, we've got SAP in there, and it's just not as easy to kind of, migrate those to cloud, implement containerization. We've still got basically the legacy and the technical debt that's in that place. So really, you need a hybrid model where you can effectively support the old that's been reliable, still used widely within organizations, but also embrace the new and deal with all of that cloud first containerization. Having everything as code, fantastic. You get exactly the right configuration and it's repeatable every time. So it's just not as easy as saying, let's just move everything and move forwards. You've still got your history and your legacy behind you.
Absolutely. Well, and what's your experience with dealing with the teams that are, on the testing side or managing environments? How are they for capacity? Do they have extra time to go modernize, or where do they sit currently?
A lot of these teams, are keeping the plate spinning. There's obviously newer teams that are moving forwards with new ways of working, but there are still some legacy teams, older structures within organizations that are very much siloed and just used to doing the same job, just keeping it moving. So as you say, not time to effectively re-platform those applications that they need to think about, splitting them out into microservices, etc. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and talking about some of the issues that they face, I mean, when you do it wrong, and the reason why teams typically don't have more time, what are some of the issues that they face when bad things happen? And what are some of the scenarios of how this goes wrong?
So when it goes wrong, obviously they can take the environments down. I think environment downtime's the key one. So if the environment's not configured correctly, if someone performs some destructive testing that then needs to effectively destroy the environment, it needs to be rebuilt. Obviously, that takes time, especially with the more legacy environments. They need the right resources to install the application, configure it, make sure compare it to production manually. Those kind of things are the real concern, leading to delays, really, and downtime, as you said, for QA teams.
Yep, absolutely. And like the thing that happened with me, it's disaster. It's bugs that weren't really bugs, and required delays to get into trying to sort out why that happened. I'll tell you, it was really interesting in the root cause analysis. After the demo, of course, the performance load testing had been roughly finished about the same time. And so we did our demo. It was a disaster. It brought my dev guys over. It's like, what's going on? We did this demo. We got back into it. Everything worked flawlessly. And so it took some work to figure out what actually happened. crossing and connecting the dots. It wasn't until I reached out to the other team and it's like, I don't understand what happened. This thing blew up. It's like, well, of course it was going wrong. We were running this load test. It's like, how do we not coordinate these things? How do we not know what each other were doing? We're in the same office and we're blowing up the same environment. And I think that's a very common problem. You can't really know. There's no indicator. I went to another, there's another prospect that I was visiting, and they had sticky notes on the environment. Team X using now, Team Y using now. It was kind of funny. Anyways, let's do a poll. I'm curious what all of you have to say about environment problems and or environments and the problems that you face today. And I think Charlene is going to help us out with that poll.
Yeah, I just pushed the poll out. Hopefully it's on your screen. We're going to take a look at the question, which is, what are your biggest issues facing your environment today? Do you actually see the poll? Want to make sure that it's out there. Yep. Okay. Looks like people are using it. What are the biggest issues facing your environments today? So you can choose from lack of visibility, tracking configuration, managing conflicts, over or underutilized, environments not available, or dev test time spent fixing environments. I'm actually going to show you the results in real time. Looks like we are getting some, excuse me, some responses here. Looks like lack of visibility right now is, this is like a horse race, guys. Rounding out their corner, we got, number 3. So yeah, we'll go ahead and keep this open for a little bit. Jeff, do you want to keep your discussion going, or you want to keep the poll open for a few minutes and then we'll take a look at the results after I close it?
Hold here for a second. So
Okay.
James, I've heard of the problem. Any surprises here about what you're seeing? And
No.
really the question is, how does this relate to what people have said to you in the past?
Sure. So definitely lack of visibility. So a lot of organizations don't actually know what non-production environments they've got. There's environments sitting around. I've even heard of, people having boxes under their desks that host environments that are found kind of, much, much later, kind of as they're picked up on infrastructure discovery tools. And it's like, where did that environment come from? Who even uses that? So the key one is lack of visibility of environments. What have you got to play with? So that one doesn't surprise me. It'd be interesting, the environment utilization. The key one there is probably more on the overutilized environments, because with underutilized environments, then they're turned off because they're expensive. So most organizations don't have underutilized unless they don't really know who's using it and when, in which case, how can you know if it's over or underutilized at that point? All you have is the fact that there's not an environment available when I need to go and test on it. So maybe it is overutilized, or I've got 3 people trying to use the same environment at the same time.
Absolutely. Well, cool. Charlene, I think we can close this and let's go on, because I think there's some interesting things to talk about. When we talk about environment management and we talk about the environments themselves, there's some core principles I think we've got to get to. The way I would lay this out is we have to transform our ways of working from fragile, meaning if something minor goes wrong or somebody doesn't notify someone else, or we're not well coordinated in a manual fashion, that things are going to melt down and explode. And we've got to transform ourselves to being more agile, more resilient, more able to handle change. And maybe the look is to think of this as a journey from fragility to agility. And in that, there's a number of different factors of how we perceive and how we operate. James, what kind of things does this make you think of as you think of the journey that people are on for their environments themselves? I mean, it's easy to say, oh, just, infrastructure is code and microservices and you're done. But that's, not overnight. In fact, that's years, if not longer. What's this make you think?
It makes me think of transformation journeys. So it feels like everyone's on some kind of a transformation journey. whether it's development methodologies, hosting, whatever it is. But it's a case of you're trying to embrace and improve your current situation. It's difficult to track. So how is that new ways of working? How is that being rolled out? Cloud being rolled out, containerization, etc. So everyone's trying to do the right thing, but it's not easy, and it's not quick, and it's also expensive to do these things. So it feels like the technical debt's still there, the legacy's still there. So you have to have this hybrid way of working. Is the way it feels to me.
Yeah, it's interesting. You said some key things. It's not easy, it's not quick, and it's not cheap. Meaning it's expensive, it's hard, it's going to take a long time. And of course, everyone's going to say we want to be more agile in our approach. How do you get there, and how do you actually help in that journey? What kind of systems could you put in place to help you in this journey? Are these things helping us?
They seem to. So these kind of things, so we've got on here, who's your friend? It kind of makes sense that you've got environments, you can track them, the usage of those environments on a spreadsheet. But that's fine if you've got a few environments and they're quite simple environments. But the moment you start adding additional environments into the mix, you start adding complexity and dependencies between environments onto it, it becomes kind of unmanageable, and you effectively spend more of your time maintaining that spreadsheet than actually you do maintaining the environment. So that's kind of the issue we've had there. From an email perspective, it's just too many emails, really. So yes, it's great to notify everyone that a team's using an environment, how long they're going to use it for. Please, can I have an environment for an extended purpose? But it gets lost. It gets lost in the jungle kind of thing, because you're getting too many emails all the time. So people are kind of moving away from emails into this world. They're kind of embracing more collaboration tools. So it's, yes, emails and notifications are good, but too many emails, and then you kind of lose your way there. From a calendar perspective, what I see is organizations changing, twisting the use of calendars to make it work for an environment, using it like a meeting room or a person, and inviting themselves to the environment to use it for a time. I think it's the issue there is visibility. So can everyone see that calendar? Are there permissions issues? How well does that process work? Yes, you have a meeting with an environment for a while, but what does that give you in terms of can I also use the environment? Can it be shared? It just doesn't give you that information.
So true. So, well, it's time for a change. It's time for us to do something different. So there is a concept called test environment management as a practice. What is it, and how does it help?
So test environment management is exactly what it says on the tin. It's a subset of release management. It's also linked to test management. It's the management and facilitation of non-production environments for use. So this could be used by your dev teams, your QA teams, your operations teams, and it effectively supports your entire software delivery lifecycle. So it's all about the booking and scheduling of environments, the maintenance of those environments, and making sure that they're always ready to be used for whatever purpose you need to them at any time.
So glorified scheduling with configuration. What about how does it handle manual and automated? What happens? What about some of the automated stuff that I've got there? How does that incorporate?
It encompasses all of it, really. So environment management is it's a facilitation role more than anything. It's working with people, kind of resolving conflicts, prioritization based on what the business needs to deliver first. So of course you should prioritize a regulatory project over a standard new feature that's not going to add additional value to customers. For example, it's it's ensuring that the environments are used in the best way to support the business. That's what environment management is.
Love it. What about how does test data fit into this, or particular builds and the configurations? Where does that play into this?
So very, very close to test data, because obviously without that data, the environments are useless for any kind of activity. So it's ensuring that the right data is in the environments to support the test scenarios, if we're talking about QA environments, for example. But the fact that the data has come from been obfuscated, or maybe it's synthesized data, depending on what's been done, but effectively definitely not using production data in a non-production environment, and then obviously all the risks and concerns that arises. Sending out many emails from test users to your existing customers.
Yeah, I did that.
I think most people have seen that when that goes wrong. Yes.
Yeah, that's what's fun about this journey for me, is like all the things you're not supposed to do. It's like I did that. Kind of funny, which interesting. You're describing this as part of our journey of modernization, part of our transformation journey of using a tool to help manage that. And it's interesting as we look at a maturity level, mixing together not only the tooling, but our processes and how the people involved. Can you talk about a little bit, maybe some of the highlights of, Houston, and we have a problem, and how do I know? Or, hey, you're doing okay because you're at this level?
Sure. So most organizations are doing environment management to some degree. So whether you're calling it environment management, or it's a side of desk activity for a test manager or a development team, it has to be done. You're talking to people about the use of the environments and keeping them up to the required configurations. So it's being done whether it's acknowledged or not. This is really around saying this is a useful function or activity, and effectively improving the, as you've got here, the maturity of that. Is it, are there processes and structures to support it? Or is it kind of driven by, I send an email to someone and then they tell me if there's an environment I can use? Is it repeatable? What degree of rigor is there? Is it audited? Can you tell me 6 months on who used an environment for a specific purpose at a specific time? Can you tell me how often was the environment up and available? How much time did we waste, or money, if we had QA teams stood down offshore, for example? So it's just adding additional rigor, repeatability. You mentioned in there effectively automation. So we touched on this world of hybrid, where you're going to have some manual deployments, but there's also going to be some automated deployments. How can you support both? With obviously the end game and the aim being everything's automated, everything's kind of just-in-time provisioning of environments. You're spinning down your cloud environments when you're not using them to save costs, all of that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's an interesting journey, isn't it? I mean, going from this state of I'm too busy just dealing with what I've got to get done that I can't think about it, to, as one customer said, get to know your environments, know everything about them, know what's there, because once you do, now you start preventing problems versus reacting to them. And that then frees up time so you can modernize and make yourself more agile in the end. It's a great journey. So let's talk about the recipe of getting there. What, one of the first steps that you've talked about in managing a practice and consulting with people is really getting the function, the roles, responsibility, deciding on a structure, sort of, getting people set up. Walk through in this recipe of getting started, how that works.
Sure. So really, when we talk about the environment management structure, what we're thinking there is, should this be a centralized function, or should this be a disparate team members? And really, it depends on your organization. If you've still got a number of towers in your organization, then it kind of makes sense to consolidate all of that knowledge into one place, shared best practices. So effectively, if your environment manager is on leave or sick, you've got someone else that can step in and manage those environments in the same way, follow the same rules. So it's really around, do you want a centralized function for your environment management, or do you just want a number of environment managers who can look after a specific area of the environments and move forward? So I wouldn't say one is better than the other. It depends on your organization and how you're structured, but just decide on how you're going to structure that.
Now that's interesting. That's a concept that we should spend some more time on. Not now. We got a lot more stuff to cover, but the fact that you could have what you're saying is, wow, James, you mean I can have an environment management tool that helps me with a distributed responsibility of environments? Sounds like that'd be kind of an interesting way to go. Step 2, really understanding the environment landscape. What's this mean?
Really, the key thing is, without visibility, you have nothing. So a lot of organizations I walk into, they don't know what environments they have, who's using them, what those environments are made up of, or how they're interconnected, and the dependencies between them. So it's not just an organization's environments. You're thinking like throwing in third-party environments. Maybe you've got some kind of credit history check environment that's connected and has to be repointed between your different QA environments because you've only got one of them. Maybe you have to pay for that third-party environment and it's not supported all the time. So it's understanding all the interdependencies between your environments and having that documented. So oh, I need one of these, therefore this is who I need to speak to get that, and this is who's responsible for it. So that's kind of what we mean when we're saying understanding the landscape.
Love it. Okay. So first I'm going to define some people, who's playing ball. Then I'm going to understand and get to know the environments. What's this about? Capture, maintain environment configurations?
So really, when you understand what environments you have, you need to understand the configurations of those environments, because maybe they're no use to you because they bear no resemblance to your production environment. So you need to ensure that you have a record of, what's your production baseline, and then effectively, what's your N+1 look like? What is your production baseline with your new feature or your defect fix on it look like? And you can track those configurations so you don't get that delays to testing, invalidated testing, releasing of defects into production. So that's why it's important.
Love it. So continuing on this journey, now we get into something of reporting. We don't need no stinking reporting, right?
What I've seen is a lot of environment management teams may lose half a day a week just compiling their weekly report for their management. Maybe it needs to go up to the executive team because they've turned around and said, our biggest expense in this area is on environments. Why do they cost so much? Why do we need another one? Give me that justification. Can I turn them off and save some money and make my budget number this year? So that's why reporting is in place. Who's using the environment? What are they being used for? Do I have too many? Do I not have enough? And therefore need to put some additional budget in for next year to build a new one because it's holding up my flexibility for the business.
It's interesting because, everything we've talked about up to reporting has been reaction. Let me react to somebody needing something and be prepared for somebody to need something. Reporting feels like it's the first step into management. Let me be more proactive, which is first steps into agility. And what sounds interesting here is it sounds like, use data to figure some things out, use data to decide, who cares about which action. I will tell you from an executive point of view, ultimately you need to show that you're making improvements along your journey and where money can be saved, because frankly, in every pipeline, one of the biggest ways and the easiest ROI of investment of time can be found on solving environments. It truly is just such a hiccup. If you think about the millions of dollars that are invested into hardware licenses and everything else, and development delays, and defects into production, oh my gosh, with all that time and energy wasted for stuff that is just dumb, somebody put the wrong build on or misconfigured environment, having the reporting to show we did better because we made an investment clears your plate. All of a sudden, now you have something to go back with authority. Say, look, let's continue this journey. Let's make some investments to improve our environments because they have an impact on the bottom line. One of the interesting areas that you point out in your recipe, James, is this idea of management looking at availability. Tell us about that.
So the question really is, what is environment availability? Well, it's the environments are up and ready to be used. But how do you measure that? We talked about offshore teams. So maybe you've got an offshore team starting at 4 a.m. local time, your local time.
Sure.
And obviously the environments need to be available for them. And then maybe it goes on till 5 p.m., 6 p.m. your time. And then that's your availability window. So it's really around measuring when it needs to be used, not measuring when it doesn't need to be used.
Mm-hmm.
So, and also maybe you've put some SLAs, KPIs in place to say the environment needs to be available 99.1% of the time. How do you measure that? And how do you, improve that? Because a lot of times projects will turn around and say, oh, it's all the environment's fault. We lost too much time. Testing overran because the environments are awful and everything's an environment issue. How do you effectively cover yourself for that? If you're an environment manager, how do you ensure that you're not being unfairly blamed for a project's delays? So it's kind of just measuring and understanding, well, how much of that was planned downtime, deployments, patches, etc., and how much of it was unscheduled downtime. Maybe you lost a server, the infrastructure went down, someone turned something off that they weren't supposed to. So it's really measuring both of those.
Love it. So let's get into some practical stuff as we continue this forward, because obviously James, we're both here from a vendor. You have a unique perspective as being a product guy. Like, you work with customers every day. You've got features that you're doing every day. Maybe we can kind of walk through some of the features and how they work, of how, if only there were a tool to help us with these problems. Notwithstanding, you still have to impact the culture to think of environments differently, from fragility to agility. And there's still some process, some ownership, and the recipe you just laid out. Let's look at some key things that we could do from a tool perspective to help this journey that you can't get in email and spreadsheets. So this is a screenshot of Patora's test environment management tool. Tell us a little bit about what we're seeing here and what it is.
So what we're seeing here is effectively records for your environments. So we're seeing your end-to-end integrated environments, and then the application instances that make up those environments as part of it. So, where have you got specific instances of applications? Where have you got gaps in your environments where there is no application to slot in there? Where is a third-party environment pointed to at any given time?
Gotcha. Well, if I'm a contrarian, I'd say something like, well, can I get this in spreadsheets?
Yes, you could have a record for this in your spreadsheet, but then how much of your time would you spend maintaining that spreadsheet? How up to date would that spreadsheet be? Would it be shared? What version are people on? Because it's worse to have bad information is to have no information on that at all. So yes, you could use a spreadsheet, but it doesn't scale to the enterprise. That's the problem.
Gotcha. Well, and request management, what does that mean?
So this is really around environment requests. Please, can I have an environment for a purpose? So this is effectively a record or ticket to say, I'd like an environment for this duration. This is who I am. And you can obviously throw in cost codes if you want to do internal chargeback for that environment usage. And really just track, this is who's using the environment, for how long, and what they're using it for. And what do they need? Because maybe this will go to an environment management team and they'll have to provision a new environment because there's not one available. So this is really keeping track of your requests for environments, but also keeping track of any change requests to environments, such as, please, can I deploy an application? Can I patch something? So it's all about tracking and auditability of your environments and their usage.
Gotcha. What if, I've got one team that handles one set of environments or another team that handles a different set of environments? How does, this request management help me?
Well, what you can do is you can effectively auto assign it to the right team. So if you've got an individual or a team looking after one line of business, for example, from an environment perspective, those tickets will go to those people. They can filter down and say, I only care about tickets that impact me. The others I'm not concerned with. So it really supports kind of remote working, distributed ways of working there. And you can have automated rules in there for how those tickets are dealt with, what's automatically approved, and also which ones need more rigor and more approvals around them.
Cool. So basically what you're saying so far is I've got a ticketing system and an improvement on the spreadsheet. What is this? And a schedule. How is that better?
So the environment schedule is driven automatically by the request system that we touched on around environment bookings. So I see a lot of organizations modeling this in Excel or other tools to show that kind of Gantt chart-like view of who's using the environment and when and what for. The benefit here is this is updated automatically. So as you put a new request in, it automatically puts that bar in there saying, this is who wants to use it, when they want to use it for, and whether it's been approved or not. Just because you've actually put a request in doesn't mean it's been approved by the environment management team to say, yes, that's okay to use it. Or maybe they're sharing an environment. So you've got two different teams using the same environment at the same time, but they're not going to impact each other. So that's the best use of resources.
So basically what you're telling me is if anybody's listening that currently gets an email or phone call saying, I need an environment for blah, 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 and they're going to a spreadsheet to type it in and see if it's available, and then they're going to a calendar to update a calendar on SharePoint or whatever, they should really call you.
Definitely. And the other thing about the schedule is this kind of really highlights environment contention up front. So rather than a few days or a week before testing is due to start, it shifts left that entire conversation around, I need to use the environment, it's already taken. Please effectively act as a facilitator. Can we share it? Do we need to build a new one? But you've got time to do that. You're not up against that deadline saying there's two teams need to use it tomorrow and I've got no time to do anything. So the only thing I can do is push it up the food chain and get someone higher up to make that priority call for me. You've actually got time to make an informed decision and support both projects.
Awesome. Well, kind of continue this conversation. Everything that you just shown really just helps, save me time with what I'm currently doing. Let's start talking about some things that you really can't do without a built for purpose tool. Knowing conflicts and getting visualizations of conflicts. Can you talk us through a bit about what this looks like and what this does for me?
Sure. So where before we were showing the schedule of show me all my environment bookings, this is really moving to managing by exception. So I only really care about environment bookings that are a problem that I need to resolve. I don't really care so much about all the stuff that's good and everyone's happy. It's just show me the problems and then I can make a decision about how I'm going to resolve those problems. So that's what this report's around, all around just show me my pain points, my bottlenecks, and then I can actually actively do something about it.
Wow. What about impact matrix? What's that mean?
So this is really around the link between environments and projects and releases to understand, okay, so who's actually using those environments, and what environments have they got booked out. So we touched earlier on path to production. So if you need to go through, say, 3 or 4 environments before you can release to production, so your early development and then test environments, maybe some kind of staging or pre-production, have the required environments been booked? Or has someone new started and forgotten that they need to book the UAT environment, for example, and therefore they're going to come to you last minute? So this is more about being proactive and saying, have I lined all of my ducks up in a row? So I'm going to have a smooth journey into production, or have I missed things?
Awesome. Well, and did I miss a slide? Oh, no, this is right. So this takes us to another conversation about configuration, environment details. Why do I need environment details? I know I'm not tracking all those. I might have a thing or two, but why is this interesting to me?
So this is really, we touched on earlier about the configurations. So in order to be useful for QA teams, obviously we need to be on the same production baseline. Otherwise, what are we testing, and what are we testing against, and what are we expecting? So this is the ability to keep a track of what configurations do my environments have, what operating system do they have on them, what versions of those operating systems, patch levels, database schemas, whatever you want. So effectively, this is completely open. You can have any configurations you want in here. But the real benefit here is if you've got a CMDB or CMS or infrastructure discovery tool, we can do integration straight into those and suck that information into Plutora. So you're not going into your CMDB and going through 100 configuration fields, seeing things you don't really care about in order just to find the one setting that you need to see. You can just pull in whatever you need, what makes sense to view from an environment perspective into Plutora, and compare and contrast configurations between environments.
Very nice. Well, and talking about the route to live, an environment pipeline, seems to answer some questions of being able to find my particular version and my particular components. Walk us through what this does for me.
So what this does is shows you your entire path to production for a particular project release. So what environments you're going to go through, and then kind of the key configuration levels. So what application versions are each of those environments on? So I can ensure that I'm not going to hit a problem later on where I need to suddenly deploy the latest production version of code to a later environment. I can shift that left again and say, here's all the environments I'm going to use. Are these all at the right configuration levels? Do I need to do anything in order to make these fit for purpose? And the other thing we can do here is we can plug into your DevOps tools to pull in those automatic build versions directly. So removing that kind of manual effort, typing in configuration details. You've already got this in your existing tool chain. Why don't we just suck in and aggregate that data and just have a single pane of glass view for all of your applications, your versions of those applications. So it's just about making your life easier and also scaling the service up to the enterprise.
Love it. Well, and that, of course, takes us to understanding, incidences. This looks like part of your reporting discussion. Tell us about this.
So this is really having dashboards that people can go in and say, okay, so what's the workload like this month? How many requests are coming in? How does that compare to last month or last year? Are we trending upwards with the number of requests? Maybe I need more people, or maybe I need to work smarter. Those kind of decision-making analytics coming through. So how are you trending? What kinds of projects are you coming in? Have you got coming in? Are they regulatory? Are you resolving technical debt? Just looking at all of these different data points and then making informed decisions off the back of these. So how much change are you introducing to production? Are you doing more? Are you doing more with less is really the question.
Love it. And ultimately that takes us to KPIs. I'm going to skip just to one more, utilization. I'm sure people are trying to figure out which environments are used, which ones are not. Are there ones they can shut down? What are you coaching people as they use the utilization? What kinds of themes are you seeing?
So we touched on earlier around you may have an environment that's either underutilized or overutilized. So if it's underutilized, can you move that workload to another environment and maybe decommission it? Because you've got all of those infrastructure costs, maintenance costs, support costs involved in there. Environments aren't cheap. And you could make some really easy cost savings there by decommissioning underutilized environments. Because what we're trying to do is get to as close to effectively 100% utilization as possible, because you're stressing your assets, making the most of what you've got. But maybe you're going over the 100% utilization and you need to say, well, I need more environments, or I need different types of environments in order to do what I'm trying to do. I need to spin up some more. So it's really giving you the data to make those informed decisions, and also to represent those decisions to the exec level to say, we need you to invest in this quite costly environment. And if you do, here's what we could achieve that we couldn't deliver last time because we just didn't have enough environments. So it's around cost savings and optimizing your use of environments.
Love it. At Platora, we're part of a value stream. We are a value stream management platform. In essence, we pull data in from across the tool chain and have some really key pieces of things we do with it, specifically around managing workflows and particular activities. One of those areas being environment management. We also have some other areas that we haven't talked about today, with the key aspect of adding analytics on top, and really ML AI kind of capabilities to help you in your journey of modernizing, becoming more agile. In the case of test environment management, this is a journey you can get started today. If you've caught any of the messages that, look, the things that we're doing could really help me, now's the time to start. We've got a particular quick start bundle that we have just announced just a couple of weeks ago that you can get started today and basically change the game out of spreadsheets, emails, and modernize, saving time, improving quality, saving money. ROI on this is, a couple of months if you can get the culture to change, which you can because you'll have data to prove it. Some of the features that you see that, if you're still using spreadsheets and email to manage this, please give us a call. We'll help you through this journey. $25,000 is our price on this. Just get going, and we can help you in this journey. There's a link there that'll get you started, and you'll see just how fast this transformation can happen in your world. This journey that James talked about is pretty key as a recipe. And once you show these analytics to everyone and give people self-service environment management, as well as managing the conflicts and improving the quality, really it changes the story to where your time will be freed up to focus on other modernization activities. And it's just really cool. Part of that is we've also have an EGuide about how to implement this as part of this practice, part of this recipe of modernizing your environment management. Feel free to download this. You've got the link there. The link is also in the chat. Get your copy of this as part of this journey. Really the message here is get a hold of us. We'd love to help you through this. By all means, it's time to take a different approach to how we deal with environments. For too long, frankly, on the QA side, we've had an unstable quality signal coming back. We've done a lot of investment into automation and trying to change the culture, only to get slapped back because, quote unquote, it didn't work. Why didn't it work? our environments have been too fragile and not available when we need them. And so thus we can't shift those practices left. So with all that in mind, please help us, let us help you in this journey. James is here to help. He helps customers every day walk through this practice. And, we've got a very good customer success team that can help you through this journey as well. So you are not alone. So with that in mind, let's go to see if we have any questions. Looking over. James, here's a question for you. How do I tell my boss that how do I prove to my boss that I want to get started? What do I got to do? I'm putting my words on top of that question.
I think the key thing is to help explain the ROI on this. So I know we've worked with a number of people to understand effectively how much money this can save, because at the end of the day, it's those questions of, this is going to save you money, help you improve the situation, optimize your use of environments moving forwards. So I think it's to look at that, explaining that ROI on this is a key one to start with.
Well, let's talk about that for just a second. Where do you find the ROI coming from? What are some of the key things that people save money?
So it's definitely around the decommissioning of underutilized or not used environments. As we talked about, if you don't have visibility, you don't know if it's being used or not anyway. So it's identifying what you can decommission, what you can turn off and make those direct cost savings, but also understanding maybe you can optimize environments elsewhere and therefore defer future costs. So you don't need to buy that additional infrastructure or provision that additional infrastructure. So it's direct and indirect cost savings around that infrastructure and support maintenance of those environments is probably the first one I would say.
Awesome. A couple more questions, but I think we might be out of time here. There's a question around implementing automation in conjunction with test environment management. Maybe we can maybe a quick answer on that. We'll turn it back to Charlene.
Definitely. So we can plug that environment booking request process into any of your automated orchestration tools. So we can use those to trigger the creation of cloud environments, environments on VMs, whatever it might be. So we integrate with all tools, and there's always a story there, depending on your level of automation in your organization.
Awesome. Reach out to us on LinkedIn. We'd love to tell you more about it. Give us a call, what have you. Thank you.
What a great presentation. You guys, I got to tell you, I'm always fascinated by what you guys have to say in your webinars. So as always, what a great presentation. I do want to quickly remind the audience that if you missed any or all of the event, you will be able to access it later on demand. So we are going to be sending out an email that contains a link to access the webinar on demand. And the webinar is also going to be on the DevOps.com website. So you can always go find it there if you want to watch it on demand. Just go to DevOps.com/webinars and look in that on demand section, and it should be right there waiting for you. All right. I also want to remind the audience that real quick, the slides, if you want to download them, they are in the handouts section. So you have the ability to do that. And before we close things out, let's go ahead and do that drawing for the $425 Amazon gift cards. Our winners today are, drum roll, please. First winner is Norbert P. Congratulations, Norbert. Our second winner today is Vinny M. Congratulations, Vinny. Next winner today is Jose G. Congratulations, Jose. And our fourth and final winner today is Timothy Q. Congratulations, Timothy. We're going to be following up with all four of you via email to get your Amazon gift card over to you. So please do check your inbox. And if you don't see it there, please check your spam folder. Jeff and James, thank you both for such a great presentation as always. What a great one. And I know that there was one other question I think that did come in. So if hopefully you guys will be able to follow up with the person who asked a question with Mark offline to get his question answered. And then anybody else, if we didn't get to your question, I do apologize, but please know that the folks at Platora are going to be answering those questions. So thank you again for those, to those who did submit questions. And thank you to Jeff and James for what a great presentation as always. We are at the top of the hour, so I am going to say thank you again. This is Charlene O'Hanlon, and I am signing off. Have a great day, everybody, and please, whatever you do, stay safe.